Tina with You Made That, and today I have my friend Alice on, and Alice is a quilter.
Hi, Tina.
So we're gonna pick Alice's brains a bit on quilting and what she's been working on and all the fun stuff. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Alice. So how long have you been quilting?
Well, I started when I was young. I was in 4-H, and so I took 4-H projects during then. And so my mom kind of showed me how to sew my first project. And so sewing, quilting is a lot like sewing. So you have to know how to sew a straight line to do the quilting and put pieces together. And so I was probably 7 or 8, and just kind of my first quilt I made back in 1980. And just kind of went from there.
Where is your first quilt?
It is in Indiana this time. So my daughter has it. And so I just haven't been able to get it back yet.
I was hoping maybe here it is. Okay, so you started young and just kind of kept going and working on it. So you've been doing it for a few years now. So you probably sew a straight line very well.
I think I do.
I'm still working on that.
It'll
Um,
come.
okay, I hope so. So what brand of sewing machines do you have or machine?
Well, I have two different kinds. I my first bought sewing machine was a Singer White, and that one kind of partially runs, but it's not my favorite anymore. Shortly after that, I probably 20 years later, I ended up getting a Husqvarna Designer One, and that is still my workhorse. That's what I like to stitch things on, and then I have a Baby Lock Elissimo for my embroidery stuff, and
Okay.
so I kind of tried a lot of different ones.
Do you need a serger in quilting or no?
I use a serger when I finish um, quilting my quilt. Then I serge all the way, or all three layers, the backing and the batting in the front. I serge all three of those together, and then I put the binding over that serged uh,
Oh,
end of it.
okay. Well, speaking of finishing your quilt, we're going to show a couple of slides here. So I'm going to add the first one. I'm going to move Alice to the top. So this is a picture of a long arm quilting machine that Alice has. And can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, this is actually called the Quilting Masters quilting machine. So it's a
Oh,
type of long arm, but as you can see, I went ahead and I hooped the whole quilt, and then the head is in the middle at the top there, and that whole head goes back and forth, and then front and back, so it gets the whole quilt at one time, and I don't have to re-roll it like a regular long arm does. I just
oh,
hoop it, and it does it all in one time. So it saves me a lot of time. I can get that is a big twin size quilt on there, and it took me 45 minutes to actually quilt it.
wow.
Yeah,
I
where if I would have a regular long arm, it would probably take about I don't know, maybe 4 hours,
okay.
four
I
to
was
five hours,
thinking
something like that.
I was thinking 45 minutes wasn't much, but thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
So, do you have like a little workshop or is this downstairs in your house? Where is this?
This is actually a separate shed that we have this in. Um,
Oh,
I wanted all my sewing machines out there, but they're not out there yet. I'd rather stay in the house and just keep my sewing machine, my quilting machine out there. So
okay. Do people ask you to finish their quilts with this or do you
yes,
not? Oh, they
yep,
do.
yep.
But you're not doing it as a business?
Just by word
Oh,
of mouth, and see, I sew for a church as well. For we make smaller quilts for the ladies and men that are in nursing homes, And um, so we make those quilts, and I take them here and I quilt on them. Between that and my own quilts and the other quilts that I'm pretty busy with all the quilting.
Oh, I see. Well, very good. And we're going to look at some of those that you've been busy with. Okay. So this one's pretty.
This one was one of my first ones I made over at the church. It measures probably about 50 by 70 ish. My playground is over there, so I just kind of mess around with different things on different designs that I want to put in there. And yeah,
Nice.
that was one of my first ones. They get a little bit more complicated as time goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to see that. We're going to see that. Okay, so here's one with a verse at the top. Tell me about this one.
Okay, this one is probably about the same size as the previous one. But we decided, since this one's for the church, that we give to people that have serious illness or cancer or something like that. Then we go ahead and we wanted them to know that it's coming from a church, and so we decided to start putting verses on this. So I do the embroidery on them, and we just insert it into the quilt somewhere.
Wow. And so the embroidery you do with the baby lock machine, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Wow. Okay. We're going to look at a few more of those. This one also has a verse up at the top.
This one has a verse too. So you'll come up with different verses, or maybe this one is the same verse, but it's just digitized a little bit different. So it's stitched out differently. I tend to put mine on top. Some of the other ladies that are helping quilt, they'll put them maybe a third of the way down. One of them ended up in the middle of the quilt. So somewhere we just want that verse in there so that it kind of gives them comfort.
Yeah. So where did this quilt go?
This one had gone to, I believe it was a cancer patient.
And is it a twin size, or how do you know what
Yeah,
size?
it was more of a manly quilt, so we give them to men and women. So this one is
Nice.
about we try and make the ones we give away. The biggest one is probably around 55 to 72 inches at the most. So it's not quite twin size, but it's something you can sit in a chair and still be able to cover from your shoulders, and maybe your feet are covered as well.
Aw. Okay, this looks like it's for a child.
Yes, this one was a customer that asked me to do this with her son's baby clothes that he no longer wears, and receiving blankets, and then she wanted his name up on top, Kingston. So that one was interesting. I think there's 33 pieces in there, and then the two borders on each side of it, well, the top and the bottom too, that's striped, is receiving blankets that I used. And then I had a whole receiving blanket on the back that it was more of a minky type, that real soft one. And then I had a little bit left over, and I made that little reading pillow off to the side there. And you can
Aw.
put a book in that little pocket there. It was kind of cute. It was fun.
Yes.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
like a puzzle putting together, because not every t-shirt was going to be the same size, or so you just had to kind of
Yeah.
put kind of arrange things. I might have had to add a little piece of other fabric to it just to make it wide enough. And yeah, it was kind of
Wow.
fun.
So where your sewing machines are, you have like a big work table, cutting table and everything where you can kind of lay it all out before you stitch it together?
I usually lay it onto my bed. Um, I
Oh,
have I have a room upstairs. As I turned a bedroom into my sewing room, and then the other room upstairs is a regular bed. So when my daughters come home, then I have to move out of that room, and so that they have a nice clean room to sleep in. But otherwise, I lay it out on a king size bed and just kind of look around and take pictures. You take pictures of the quilt so because you can get a better view whether that the colors are in the right place.
hmm.
And you might be able to see that you had two reds together where you didn't see it laying flat on a bed.
good tip. That's cool. This one's pretty too.
This is one of my favorites. A couple years ago, some a store out in New York had started something called Row by Row, and it started in New York and then Pennsylvania, and then she went across the United States and added stores from different states and asked the stores to come up with a row. And if you see, those are all there's 8 different rows in there. And so what the customer had to do was go to the store and they gave you the free pattern, or you could buy the kit that was there, and then since it was kind of a contest type thing, you put 8 rows together and you turn it into one of those stores, and then you ended up getting, I think it was 25 fat quarters. So this one, yeah, this one I think I made my 3rd year that we did that. Me and a friend of
Wow.
mine were doing it, and so that was my 3rd year, and I thought I'm going to use my own fabrics this time and just kind of coordinate it color wise. And so that's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. Wow, your 3rd year. That's amazing. All right. Okay, so the blue and white one has embroidery in those 5 rectangles, and then the one on the right has embroidery too. So tell us about these.
Okay, so the blue and white one, actually, that was one of my first ones too, once I started at church and started thinking that we have to somehow make it look like it came from a church and, disciple that way. So that's embroidery designs that I bought, and I embroidered them on the machine and
Wow.
then arranged it the way you see it there. And if you look at the close up picture, all that little fancy design right there, that's actually embroidery also. And I just did that
Oh,
throughout the whole quilt by rehooping it. That was before my quilting machine. So that was kind of fun too. Is you can embroider the whole back. I did it in white, so the whole back is blue, and so you see all that embroidery on the back as well. So that was for a church one, and that one was given to a child that was, I think, 10 years old, and he had cancer as well.
oh,
So the one on the right, with the little farm animals and everything, I did that for a customer, and she did the hand embroidery, and then I had to cut them up in pieces and arrange it the way I did, and put it in a quilt like that, and then I quilted it for her.
oh, cool. I love it. Okay, more embroidery. How did you do this?
Well, this is something that a company called Anita Good Design had come up with. He was starting to get into long arm designs, and there is actually 7 rows. If somebody would do this on the regular long arm where they have to roll the quilt, you would roll it 7 times so that you can connect it all and it would look like this. Where mine, I had to put it together on my computer, and then I brought it to my machine and it just did it all at one time for me like that. So
Wow.
that was kind of neat. I think eventually I'll probably color it in to give it some more color or something, but I just haven't gotten that far. I can't bring myself to do that because I haven't done it before.
Oh, yeah, that'd
So
be scary.
yeah, I mean it's a lot of work into that already, and you're just going, I don't know if I want to do that.
How fun to see that as it was going along. And then you see it like, wow, it is working. That is cool.
Yep.
I like it. Oh, this is pretty.
Okay, so this is another row by row that where I went to every store and got a block, and I put 12 rows in this one. Instead of putting it in a row, it is put into each square. I could have made them rows, but I thought, I'm just going to make them into squares because there's the whole row, like on the other quilt, measures like 9.5 by 36.5 unfinished. It's unfinished. So it'd be 9 by 36 finished. And so you have 9-inch blocks. So they all match somewhere. This was one of my favorite ones too. And on the back is a minky snowflake design. So it was kind of cool.
Okay, so you say Miki. What does that mean?
Minky is like a really soft, it's almost like a furry type, but it's not fur. It's just a
Oh,
really soft fabric. Some people don't like to quilt with it just because it's kind of slick on one side, but then really soft on another side. But my machine has no problem with it.
these are pretty too. Everything's pretty, but I love purple, so
So the one on the left is the one I made for church again. So that was before we started putting um, verses on, and so again, it's just my playground, and so I came up with it's called a twisted. So the center section is started out as squares. They were, I believe, they were probably 5-inch squares, and then you take this ruler that has an X in it, and you line that X on your seam. You know, like if you take that picture to the right, that's what it started out looking like. You know, where it was a little bit different arrangement, but it was like that. So you would take that square and line it up on your seams and then recut those squares. And then you put them back together because now you have another square, but they're twisted. And yeah, that was my playground. I wanted to see if I liked to do it, and I've done another one like it, and
oh,
but it's not my favorite thing to do. I think there's a little bit of waste of fabric there, but I do think they look neat. So the one on the right is that now that's a smaller one that went to a person in a wheelchair at the nursing home or assisted living, but it's small enough just to cover their waist and over their knees to kind of keep them warm because they're always cold in there. And then, since we've made them like that, we decided now we're putting pockets like on the wide end because they measure about 35 by 42. So we'll put it on the 42-inch long thing. We'll put a pocket in there where they can put their hands in and they can keep their hands warm as well. So we keep adding, we keep evolving as we do things at church there. So
nice. Yeah, you learn what they need and then you say, we can do that.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about fabric. So, do people give you like scraps of theirs, like, hey, I'm not sewing anymore here because they know that you make quilts? Do you take on orphan
Yeah.
scraps?
Yes, we get a lot of scraps now between the church and then me personally. People would just give me some, and actually, this quilt behind me is all made from scraps. It is
Ooh,
a, and those are what they start out as 1.5-inch squares, and then they turn into 1-inch squares finished. So I'm just putting them together so that they can be useful. So
do you iron them on a grid or a fusible interfacing before you sew?
yes, it is something that I found on in a fabric store. I went in and I found this grid from 10 Sisters. It's called 10sisters.com. And they had this grid. This one actually is not 10 Sisters grid itself. I made mine, but um, yeah, so I just did that. It comes just plain. And then I glued these on already. And then you start just putting different colored ones on it until you get the design you want. And then you start sewing it when it's all well, then you would iron it, and then you start sewing it. You just fold it over, sew it, fold it over again, sew it, fold it over again, and sew it. And then when you're done doing that whole one length, then you would clip in between here up to the seam, and don't cut the seam, and then you would do it this way. So then you would do it this way and this way. But when you would go ahead and flip those, you would actually, it looks like this on the back then, where you can actually flip these two so that your seam just comes out perfect. I mean, there's it's just wonderful. I love doing it this way, especially with the small pieces.
Is that your current project right now then?
This is my current project. This
Okay.
one I started, and it's not real big. It's about 45 by 55. And so now I'm making a bigger one because I still have lots of scraps.
Oh,
So this is how big this grid starts out. It's like 19 by 22 or something like that. And this is how big it ends up being. And it's like 12 by 18, you know?
wow.
So it really takes a lot of scraps. This piece has, I think, 180 pieces in it.
Wow.
This thing has 1,735 pieces in it. It's pretty
And
cool.
who counted all that?
I did because I had to name the quilt. So I called it 1735 Scrappy.
Do you have a local quilt store? Do you order online or a little bit of both?
I only ordered online one time. Um, and I was satisfied, but I like to feel the fabric. So my closest quilt store I have is probably 25 miles away, and they have over 2,000 bolts of fabric, so I should be able to find something there. And then not too far away is a Joann's Fabrics, and then there's also a Hobby Lobby. So um, there's a little bit of difference in those kind of fabrics, but the local quilt store, you got to watch their fabrics too, just because not every fabric is made the same. Some are better for quilting, some are not.
So you guys have quite the setup at church. It sounds like you've got, the cutters and the table and even sewing machines there too.
And people have donated lots of fabric, so there's no way we're ever going to go through all this fabric in my lifetime. I don't think that's how much fabric we have.
Nice. Do you offer, I guess, tutorials for new people, or do you ever talk about, hey, come on, see what we do in the quilting room or anything?
We do. We don't have tutorials, but we invite people all the time. And if they want to learn to quilt, we will teach them. And
Oh,
we'll
fun.
start them out simple and go from there.
Oh, good. Yeah, got to pass it on.
Yep.
Well, very good. And I do appreciate your time, Alice, and teaching us some things about your hobby and quilting.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, maybe we can do it again sometime.
Okay. Maybe I'll have
All
my
right.
first quilt back
Ooh.
at that time. So,
Yeah, that'd be fun to see. All right. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye.
bye.